Chapter 451. Spirit Calming Grass. Having bought the dragon scale protective amulet for 50 gold coins, Xianxia bade the vendor farewell in satisfaction. There was no one in the world who was completely healthy, and demanding compensation for treatment wasn't anything much. Even if one was truly healthy, one would at least want to raise one's cultivation. Considering how even a 4-star master teacher wasn't capable of making a person achieve a breakthrough with just a short moment of guidance, Xianxia's guidance was more than sufficient to replace a tutelage jade token. Even without money, Xianxia was confident that he could buy this artifact for sure. Thus, he wasn't worried at all. After walking around the market for a while longer, the group realized that there was nothing else of value left here. Thus, Zhao Feiwu said, "Let's go up and take a look. The treasures on the second floor are much more valuable than those of the first floor, and most of them have already been verified by appraisers." As such, the crowd headed up the stairs. The second floor wasn't as chaotic as the first floor, where booths and shouting vendors filled the entire venue. The scale of the second floor was much smaller, and there were various stores in the area. The objects on display were clearly much more valuable than those on the first floor. If what was sold on the first floor could be considered as miscellaneous goods, then those on the second floor could be considered as true treasures. All the stores here had at least 100 years of history to them, and regardless of whether it was their reputation or the goods that were on sale in their shops, they were much better than the booths on the first floor. Hung at the front of each store were all kinds of plaques, such as Master Mo Xiu's appraised treasures, Master Sun Xiong's appraised treasures, Master Hong Li's appraised treasures. All kinds of different goods were displayed in each store. Even though these stores weren't large and the items inside weren't as many as the booths below, just the fact that it carried the name of the appraisers attracted the gazes of many, making them even more popular than the booths below. The largest store on the second floor is First Class Pavilion, which is right in front of us. The items they sell, just like their name, are all top grade. Even though it isn't operated by an appraiser, it's the most bustling store here. In fact, appraisers also frequent there personally to trade for some treasures. Jin Songhai said. He had been here before, so he knew quite a bit about this place. As for Zhao Feiwu, she only knew about this location from some books, so she wasn't too sure about the details. Let's go over and take a look. The primary objective of Xianxia's trip here was the soulless metal humanoid, so he wasn't really interested in the other miscellaneous stuff. However, since the supposed first-class pavilion was right before them, it wouldn't hurt to take a look. Besides, he could also try asking about the metal humanoid there. Walking past row after row of stores, it didn't take long before they stopped by a vast space with 3 gold words written on it. With just a look, Xianxia could tell that the calligraphy had reached an extremely high level of artistic conception. To think that it would be an art piece of the 5th level. Xianxia's eyes couldn't help but light up. He was a 3-star painter, so he had an in-depth knowledge of calligraphy and painting. The 3 large words First-Class Pavilion might seem simple on the surface, but the words were written with forceful and flowy strokes, giving a feeling as though the words would leap out at any moment just like an ascending flood dragon. It was clear that the words were anything but simple, and it had already reached the 5th level of painting. At this kind of level, the words had already reached the level of spirit creation. Even if one were to look at it for an extended period of time, not only would one not feel fatigued, one would even feel refreshed and revitalized. Just these 3 words were probably worth a huge fortune already. As expected of the #1 store in the appraiser hall, its scale sure wasn't anything that the other stores could match up to. Walking into the store, Xianxia saw several people strolling about the displays. Some of the customers dressed in appraiser robes were staring fixedly at the treasures before them with a tranced look. All occupations were enjoyable when one could immerse oneself into it. Appraising was the same as well. Some of the most exquisite masterpieces were at a quality such that even the greatest craftsmen and blacksmiths could only create one in their entire lives. It was practically impossible to replicate it, and these were the treasures that left countless appraisers awed when they examined them. "Welcome. May I know what you are looking for? I can guide you around if you need," offered an attendant as he walked over. "There's no need for that. We'll just take a casual look." Xianxia shook his hands. Then, he walked over to the various treasures displayed on the shelves. They were indeed much more valuable than the artifacts seen below. All of the items carried a powerful aura, and they seemed to resonate with the spiritual energy in the air. Even without the eye of insight, it was apparent with a look that they were of great value. Upon seeing that Xianxia's gaze was on a large cauldron, the attendant immediately walked forward and introduced, "This is the divine copper cauldron. If you were to put spirit stones inside, it would automatically refine and cleanse it, making it easier to absorb the spiritual energy within it. Using this object, your speed of cultivation can be heightened by 10%. As for this, it's the 9 Dragons Cauldron. Every single mouth of the cauldron harnesses a surge of sword chi, making it a formidable weapon when it's activated. Even a Xianxia realm pinnacle expert would be killed swiftly before it." Upon hearing the introduction, Xianxia nodded his head in awe. Honestly speaking, all of these items were truly worthy of being classified as treasures. If placed in any of the Tier 1 kingdoms, it could become a national weapon to deter aggressors. But after taking a look at the price, Xianxia couldn't help but smile bitterly. None of these items were cheap. Putting everything aside, just the divine copper cauldron was already worth 200 spirit stones, and the 9 Dragons Cauldron was priced at 320 spirit stones. Even a Tier 1 kingdom would be unable to fork out such a sum. Even if it was Shenyuan Kingdom, its finances would probably suffer greatly for many years if it were to purchase it. This is the appraisal authentication certificate. Regardless of whether it was the divine copper cauldron of the 9 Dragons Cauldron, there was a carved jade at its bottom which detailed the name of an appraiser, his evaluation, as well as his signature. Yes, most of the treasures of our first-class pavilion will go through the hands of appraisers to have them authenticated. "We will never deceive our customers," the attendant said proudly. "UN." Xianxia nodded his head. Then, with a thought, lines of insight appeared in his eyes. Eye of insight. He wanted to see if there was any treasure beyond his current means here. It didn't take him long to scan through the artifacts in the room, and in the end, he simply shook his head. There were many valuable treasures here, but there was nothing beyond him like the dragon scale protective amulet from before. "Teacher, appraiser Liu Chang." Just as Xianxia was looking around to see if there were any treasures he had missed, Yuan Dao exclaimed in shock. Following the direction of Yuan Dao's finger, Xianxia saw a familiar figure. It was the person who competed with him over the dragon scale protective amulet previously. At this moment, his haughtiness and aura of superiority had disappeared. He followed behind an elder with a respectful look, just like a humble student. The elder was in his 50s, and he had an authoritative disposition to him. With a single glance, it was clear that he was a person who had been on a powerful position for a long period of time. Right in front of the duo was an average-sized plant with a purple flower on top. Amidst the petals, faint yellow veins could be seen, and it exuded a faint fragrance which left one in a tranquil state upon being breathed in. On top of treasures, the first-class pavilion also dealt in some of the rarer medicinal herbs. Ashen stems, slightly yellow leaves, petals divided by yellow veins. Could this be spirit calming grass? After a moment of hesitation, Zhao Feiwu asked. "This gongzi indeed has good eyes. That's indeed spirit calming grass. This is the only stalk within the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and our first-class pavilion bought it at an exorbitant price. It's said to be exceptionally useful in nourishing one's soul, and rumor has it that it can even wake a dormant soul." The attendant chuckled. "Wake a dormant soul." Hearing those words, Xianxia's eyebrows shot up, and unknowingly, his fists clenched tightly together. Chapter 452. Purchasing a herb at an inexpensive price. However, he quickly shook his head with a bitter smile. Xianxia had stumbled across the spirit calming grass in one of the books he had read, and its main function was to calm one's spirit, allowing one to enter the state of heart of tranquil water more easily. It didn't have the effect of waking a dormant soul. Otherwise, given Xianxia's understanding of herbs, he wouldn't be at a loss over the matter. Wake a person's soul? That's impossible. Zhao Feiwu frowned. She had read many books regarding medicinal herbs as well, and she knew that the effects of this herb weren't as exaggerated as the attendant put it out to be. Normal spirit calming grass indeed doesn't have that effect, but this one is different. It's the Emperor's spirit calming grass, and it grows by consuming the spiritual energy within spirit stones. As such, its properties have been enhanced to the point that it's highly effective even for transcendent mortal experts. Upon speaking of this stalk of grass, the attendant's eyes began to glow. Consuming spiritual energy within spirit stones? It's fed using spirit stones. Correct. From its germination, it's placed within a unique formation which extracts the purest spiritual energy contained within a spirit stone to provide the required energy for the spirit calming grass's growth. And to grow to such a size, this spirit calming grass has probably consumed over 100 pieces of spirit stones. Considering the manpower and resources required to groom this herb, it's definitely an invaluable treasure, the attendant explained. Xianxia was taken aback. 100 spirit stones just to groom a stalk of grass. Even Xianxia had yet to expend so many spirit stones in his cultivation. To think that a single stalk of grass would be treated even better than him. It was truly the case of a human being beneath a stalk of grass. Indeed. Due to the great care showered during its growth, its property has been enhanced greatly, granting it immense effects on one's soul, the attendant said. Even though Xianxia was surprised, he didn't take the attendant's words at face value. Instead, he activated his eye of insight and took a closer look. He had to determine for himself whether this stalk of grass was truly effective on dormant souls. Soon, his eyes lit up. Even though the medicinal herb was expensive, it wasn't beyond Xianxia's current cultivation realm yet. According to the information reflected in the eye of insight, it was really useful toward dormant souls. However, unlike what the attendant said, it couldn't wake dormant souls. Instead, it simply stabilized it, preventing it from dissipating. Even though dormant souls were known to be souls that were sleeping, in truth, they were just too weak to be woken up. It was just like how a severely ill patient was too weak to get up from his bed. The great impact that Lu Chong's body suffered back then had caused his soul to dissipate. Even though Xianxia had saved him swiftly, the other party still suffered great damage, and the strength of his soul was less than 1/100th of what it was previously. As such, it was unable to sustain the functions of his body, resulting in his coma. Even though this spirit calming grass didn't have the ability to wake Lu Chong up, it could stabilize his soul and even strengthen it slowly. I must get it. Xianxia had no idea how he could wake Lu Chong up at this point, but one thing he was certain was that he couldn't allow his soul to grow weaker and weaker. Since he had stumbled across this spirit calming grass, he mustn't allow it to pass him by. After a moment of hesitation, Xianxia turned to the attendant and asked, "This, how much does it cost?" This stalk of spirit calming grass is one of the most expensive treasures in our first-class pavilion. It's priced at 500 spirit stones, the attendant said. 500. Xianxia's body shook. He couldn't even take out 5 spirit stones at the moment, not to mention 500. You must be jesting. Will you accept my 500 gold coins instead? Appraiser Hall. Why don't you call it Daylight Robbery Hall instead? Given how expensive every single one of your items are, how in the world do you expect others to buy it? Surely there are very few customers who can afford that sum. Just as Xianxia was considering how he could lower the price to 500 gold coins and take it down, a deep voice sounded in front of him. All right, I'll be taking that spirit calming grass. Also, help me wrap up the verdant bamboo, deep accruing grass, yin-yang umbrella, that I've just browsed through as well. Lifting his head, Xianxia saw that the one who had just spoken was the elder who came in along with appraiser Liu Chang. It seemed as though in the other party's view, 500 spirit stones were no different from 500 gold coins. Sure. Upon hearing the other party's words, the attendant serving the elder hurriedly took the various items that the elder pointed out excitedly. The more the customer buys, the greater the commission of the attendant. I apologize, but it's already sold. Customer, why don't you continue browsing around to see if there's anything that would interest you? The attendant who tagged along with Xianxia shook his head in disappointment upon seeing that the spirit calming grass had been taken away. There's no need for me to look any further, I want this herb. There was nothing else in this store that caught Xianxia's eyes. As such, he walked forward and said, "Wait a moment. It can't be that you're still interested in the spirit calming herb." Seeing Xianxia rushing forward and shouting "Wait a moment," the attendant beside him leaped in fright. The other party had already said that he was taking it. If you were to insist on taking it away at this point, it'll be no different from theft. But more importantly, do you know who the other party is? To rush over despite not knowing who the other party is, aren't you being too reckless? Zhong Xian's voice was bright and clear, and he immediately caught the notice of the elder and the others around him. Upon seeing Zhong Xian, appraiser Liu Chang began glaring at the other party. He had just attempted to claim the item that the other party was buying. Could the other party be holding a grudge, so he wanted to do the same as well? What are you up to? Thus, appraiser Liu Chang stepped in front and blocked Zhong Xian's path. Since he couldn't be bothered with appraiser Liu Chang, Zhong Xian turned to the elder and said, "I want this spirit-calming grass. We've already set our eyes on this herb, you should look for other items to buy." Appraiser Liu Chang waved his hands. "Even though you all have set his eyes on it, you all haven't paid up yet, right? It's only natural for the good to go to the highest bidder. As long as the price I offer is higher than yours, I should be able to take it, right?" Zhong Xian replied appraiser Liu Chang calmly. "You." Appraiser Liu Chang's chest rose and fell rapidly, and he nearly erupted on the spot. Those words were extremely familiar to him. It was what he said to the other party just a moment ago. It seemed like this fellow was really here to cause trouble. Otherwise, how could even his words be identical? Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai exchanged glances and smiled bitterly. Zhong Xian indeed wasn't one to let anyone who crossed him get away easily. However, the elder didn't look like someone who lacked money. It would be no easy feat to purchase the item he had set his eyes upon. "What is your offer then?" "Just to let you know, we're purchasing this spirit-calming grass for 500 spirit stones." Suppressing his fury, appraiser Liu Chang harumphed. The fellow before had to hesitate even before a measly sum of 15 spirit stones, so it was almost certain that he didn't have much money. To outbid them on this medicinal herb and take it away was surely impossible for him. "Can you give this spirit-calming grass away to me?" Zhong Xian turned to the elder and asked. Even though appraiser Liu Chang's standing was high, he acted subserviently before this elder. From this, it could be seen that the standing of the elder was far superior to appraiser Liu Chang. Also, the one who was buying the spirit-calming grass was the elder, so appraiser Liu Chang probably had no say in this matter. Since he had no say, what was the point of wasting time with him? "Aye." Upon being ignored, appraiser Liu Chang's face flushed bright red. The elder had been watching the argument of the duo, and with his hands behind his back, he replied impassively, "He's my student, so he has a say in whether I'll sell this medicinal herb or not. However, I do have a use for this medicinal herb and I don't wish to part with it. Thus, it doesn't matter how high a price you offer." Student. Given that appraiser Liu Chang was a 2-star appraiser, his teacher must be at least a 3-star or even 4-star appraiser. It was no wonder that he could buy a stalk of medicinal herb priced at 500 spirit stones so easily. "Doesn't matter how high a price I offer?" That might not necessarily be the case. Zhong Xian said. "Oh. Why don't you tell me your offer then?" The elder looked at Zhong Xian in interest. The attendants spectating the commotion were also filled with curiosity. That young man might be unaware of who the elder was, but they were extremely clear of his identity. Even if this elder wasn't the richest man in Honghai City, he wasn't too far away from it. Even if one could offer up something that interested this elder, it would probably have an astronomical price. Zhao Feiwu and the others were also intrigued and curious at the matter. This fellow had bought the dragon scale protective amulet previously through his medical skills, so until now, they had no idea how much wealth this young man possessed. Since he was determined to buy this spirit-calming grass, he should at least take out a portion of his fortune now. After all, without real money, the first-class pavilion wouldn't sell something worth 500 spirit stones to him. Even if Zhong Xian intended to talk his way out of it, these attendants weren't qualified to make the decision. After all, such a sum of money was way beyond them as well. Just as everyone was perplexed over this matter, curious to see what Zhong Xian would do next, the young man in question declared confidently, "I can offer 500 gold coins." Pu. Appraiser Liu Chang nearly spurted a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. "This again? Is there even a point to be doing this? When I offered 50 spirit stones to buy down that bizarre object, you offered 50 gold coins in exchange. This time, for such a valuable spirit-calming grass, you intend to use the same method as well. Can we start conversing properly? The mouths of the attendants watching the commotion also twitched violently. The young man had spoken so confidently, so they thought that he would offer a huge sum of money. In the end, to offer 500 gold coins. You're here to cause trouble, right? The attendant who had been waiting on Xianxia ever since his entry felt so embarrassed that he wanted to find a pit to bury himself in. He thought that Xianxia would really be able to offer a price that no one could match up with, but to think that it was this. Cough, cough. Even if you don't have sufficient money, you shouldn't offer something that can't even buy you a handful of dirt. Just as the crowd was about to faint from the ridiculousness of the situation, Zhao Feiwu slapped her forehead and said, "Elder Jin, prepare to make a move. I'm afraid that if we don't protect him, he might end up being pummeled to death." Yes. Jin Songhai nodded as he secretly propelled the Xianxia in his body, preparing himself to make a move at any moment. He shared the same sentiments as Gongzi. This elder was clearly of high standing, and to provoke such a person as well, Xianxia was truly arrogant. In fact, he found it a miracle that the other party could survive until now given his character. Purchasing a spirit-calming grass for 500 gold coins. As expected, the elder's face immediately darkened. His aura began gushing out like a gigantic torrent. Even though it was hard to gauge his cultivation realm, his strength didn't seem to pale to Jin Songhai in any way. Most probably, the other party had at least reached Transcendent Mortal 3 Dan. Indeed. Xianxia nodded. Seeing how the other party admitted to it so candidly without the slightest hint of embarrassment, the elder harumphed. Do you think that the first-class pavilion would reject an offer of 500 spirit stones and sell such a valuable herb to you for 500 gold coins instead? Who do you think you are? Do you think that you are the Lord of Honghai City or the head of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? I am neither of the two. I'm just someone who's interested in buying the spirit-calming grass. Xianxia shook his head calmly. Besides, I intend to buy it from you instead of the first-class pavilion. I believe that you'll definitely sell it to me for 500 gold coins. Buy it from me. The elder flew into a frenzy, and his facial muscles convulsed violently. How can you be so sure that I'll be so cheap as to sell a medicinal herb worth 500 spirit stones to you for 500 gold coins? You must be dreaming. Chapter 453. Purchasing a herb at an inexpensive price. Even though he was rich, it didn't come from nowhere. Naturally, he wouldn't be so foolish as to sell an item he bought for 500 spirit stones for 500 gold coins. Was there something wrong with this fellow's head? Otherwise, how could one speak such foolish words? Turning his head to look at the young man, he saw the other party nodding his head with a smile. Indeed. Are you done yet? Do you know who my teacher is? How dare you speak such arrogant words here? Seeing how the other party was going overboard as to even provoke his teacher, appraiser Liu Chang couldn't hold himself back anymore and stepped forward. Who your teacher is? Given his sharp eyes that could determine the crux of an artifact with a single glance, if I'm not mistaken, he must be an appraiser. Xianxia glanced at appraiser Liu Chang. It's good that you know that much. My teacher is. Liu Chang was just about to introduce his teacher's identity when the elder interrupted. All right, since you know that I'm an appraiser, you should know that I've no lack of money. Thus, you should know that it's impossible for me to sell something that I've already bought. He finally understood that the fellow must have something wrong with his head. As he couldn't be bothered with to argue with a psycho, he turned to his attendant and said, "Wrap these items up for me and send them over to my residence." Yes. The attendant nodded. Before long, several stalks of herbs and artifacts were brought to one side to be packed. Zhao Ya and the others sneaked a glance over and they were astounded. Even though the elder didn't buy much, every single one of the item was exceptionally expensive. None of their prices were below 300 spirit stones. The total cost had already exceeded 2,000 spirit stones. To spend so much money in one go without the slightest hesitation, the elder's wealth was indeed astonishing. Facing such a person, their teacher actually offered to purchase a herb worth 500 spirit stones for 500 gold coins. Wasn't that going a little too far? Staring at their teacher doubtfully to see what he would do next, they only saw him placing his hands behind his back and shaking his head with a look of pity. Sigh, I thought that an appraiser would at least be a little sharper when purchasing something. To think that you would spend such a huge sum of money just to take away a fake. Your preferences are indeed hard to understand. There was a hint of lamentation to his tone, as though disappointed by the other party's actions. Fake? Do you know who my teacher is? How dare you spout nonsense here? Appraiser Liu Chang thought that the other party would tone it down after his teacher had spared him. Yet, the other party still went on to utter such words. Liu Chang's face immediately darkened. Are you done yet? My teacher chose to let you off, and yet you still dare to say that he bought a fake. Are you seeking death? Sigh. Zhong Xian was completely unconcerned with the other party's reprimand and simply sighed once more. Shaking his head, he continued, It's one thing for one's eyes to be bad, but to refuse to admit to it as well. More importantly, you still claim to be some incredible figure. How humiliating. Forget it. Since you're unwilling to listen to my advice and insist on buying a fake, I won't be nosy then. Let's go. After finishing his piece, Zhong Xian prepared to leave with Zhao Wei and the others. Hold it right there. Who did you say is buying a fake? If you don't clarify yourself right now, don't even think of leaving. Seeing how the other party was hinting at his teacher buying a fake and shamelessly denying the matter, Appraiser Liu Chang couldn't hold himself back any longer and immediately stepped forward. At the same time, his aura gushed out. Xianxia drove through his body, granting him immense strength. Transcendent Mortal One Dan Prolonged Longevity Realm. Even though he was at the same realm as Ding Hong, he was a cultivator of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance and was entitled to significantly greater resources than the latter, and as such, he was much stronger as well. If he were to make a move, Zhong Xian would probably find it hard to withstand his might. Even so, Zhong Xian remained completely nonchalant to the immense might the other party was exuding. Instead, he glanced at the other party disdainfully and said, Why? Not only do you have bad vision, causing you to be unable to discern a fake good, you're also attempting to silence all those who advised you out of goodwill. Zhong Xian had encountered many of such situations as Xianxia. Without such confidence, he wouldn't have been able to fool others with his act. Bad vision? Do you know who my teacher is? There are countless people in Honghai City who are begging my teacher to spare a glance at their artifacts. With a face reddened in anger, Liu Chang lashed out. However, halfway through his words, the elder walked over. Enough. Waving his hands casually to stop Liu Chang, the elder turned to Zhong Xian and said, You said that I've bought a fake, so may I know which one is it? Do you have any proof of it? Even though the elder had asked an extremely ordinary question, his tone carried deep confidence, exerting a huge pressure on Zhong Xian. It felt as though as long as Zhong Xian were to misspeak, he would immediately be punished. Proof? Are you sure you want to know? Zhong Xian smiled. If your reasoning is sound and you have evidence of the matter, I'll admit to my vision being bad. However, if it ends up that you're only spouting rubbish to gain the attention of others, I can overlook it, but I'm afraid that Liu Chang might not share my sentiments. The elder's tone was filled with authority. As an appraiser, being accused of making a flawed judgment was a huge matter. If the other party was truly speaking nonsense, even if he didn't make a move, his student, Liu Chang, also wouldn't let the other party off. This fellow sure knows how to cause trouble. Taking all of these into sight, Zhao Feiwu rolled her eyes. In her view, if Zhong Xian really wanted the spirit calming grass, he should just take out the money required for it. To make an enemy out of such a powerful figure, for it was the most foolish decision one could make. Why must he cause trouble wherever he goes? Couldn't he learn how to stay still? If only he was willing to take out the money, wouldn't the matter be solved easily? If Zhong Xian were to learn of the other party's thoughts, he would definitely burst into tears. You are the daughter of the Alliance head, the princess of the Empire. It's easy for you to say those words since you don't lack money. If I had the money too, do you think that I'd be so bored as to put my life at risk just to act cool? Spouting rubbish to gain the attention of others? You're thinking too much into it. Shaking his head, Zhong Xian stepped forward and pointed at the pile of objects that the elder had just bought. This verdant bamboo is something that you have just bought, right? Indeed. Teacher spent 300 spirit stones on buying this verdant bamboo. Just to let you know, It's the only one you'll find in the entire Honghai city. Liu Chang sneered coldly. Why, do you think that there's a problem with it? The item was right there and there was a label beneath it. There was nothing to deny about it. Besides, Liu Chang didn't think that there was a problem with this object either. He had also taken a close look at that item and verified that there was no problem with it. Ignoring the other party's words, Xianxia circled around the bamboo, touched it with the tip of his finger, and as though having confirmed something, he smiled and asked, "May I know what the properties of the verdant bamboo are and what do you intend to do with this medicinal herb?" The verdant bamboo is a unique spirit medicine. Its leaves are the main ingredient to forging verdant crystalline pills. This pill can nurture a heart of crystal within one to dispel one's inner demons, thus putting one in a state of calmness. It's exceptionally useful to transcendent mortal 3-dan yin-yang realm experts. As for the stem, it's extremely tough and it can be used to forge the spirit weapons verdant bow and piercing arrows. The verdant bow is a spirit low-tier weapon, and when paired with the piercing arrows, it can easily pierce through one's body. Due to the extreme speed of arrow when the two are paired together, it's capable of killing one without even leaving behind a wound. It's one of the weapons that transcendent mortal experts are willing to fork out an exorbitant sum to buy. And of course, it has one last method of utilization. It can be used as a formation core. However, this property is significantly weaker than the former two and it's not worth mentioning at all. Stroking his beard, the elderly spoke impassively. His composed voice was tinged with confidence as he revealed his broad knowledge on the matter. Most people knew that the verdant bamboo was valuable, but very few were aware of its uses. It was only because of his identity as an appraiser that he knew a thing or two about it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent a hulking sum of 300 spirit stones to purchase it. Indeed, most people only know that the leaves of the verdant bamboo can be forged into a pill. Very few know that it can be forged into a bow, arrow, and serve as a formation core as well. It's impressive that you know all of these. After praising the other party, Zhongxian's lips curled up and he continued on, "Since you know the various functions of the verdant bamboo, may I know if you're using it to lay out a formation, forge a bow and arrows, or forge a pill?" Given that the stem and the leaves came from the same origin, the medicinal properties of the leaves could be best brought out if the stem was used as fuel for the pill forging process. On the other hand, for the forging of the bow and arrow, the verdant bamboo would have to be nourished in a unique medicinal fluid when it's still in its freshest state. However, if one were to do so, the leaves would be mixed in with impurities, rendering it useless. And similarly, if the verdant bamboo was used as a formation core, one would have to carve inscriptions on it. This would damage the leaves and bamboos, rendering it unusable for any other purpose. Thus, even though the verdant bamboo had 3 uses to it, one could only choose one of it for each bamboo. If one attempted to be ambitious and use a single bamboo for multiple purpose, one might potentially end up simply wasting the bamboo instead. Of course it's for pill forging. Even though it isn't too bad to use it for the other purposes, the verdant crystalline pill is still the most valuable of the 3. A deep frown appeared on the elder's face. He had no idea what Zhongxian was up to, but even so, he still answered his question patiently. The verdant crystalline pill was a nourishment that was useful to even a transcendent mortal 3-dan yin-yang realm expert. Every single pill could fetch an astronomical sum. This wasn't something that the verdant bow or the formation could match up with. If one wanted to maximize one's profit from the verdant bamboo, one should definitely choose to forge the most valuable verdant crystalline pill. After receiving the answer to his question, Zhongxian declared, "Since you're intending to forge verdant crystalline pills, I can tell you upright that what you bought is a fake." Fake. The verdant bamboo has a smooth green body, reminiscent of jade. There is a huge gap in between its leaves, and even the sharp edge of a blade cannot wound it. On every single division, there are 3 leaves, and each leaf has 7 veins on it. This time, it was Liu Chang who replied. He swiftly stated the dozens of ways to appraise the authenticity of a verdant bamboo, and every single point that he mentioned matched the properties of the bamboo in his hand. This is the way to ascertain the authenticity of a verdant bamboo. Even I can easily tell that it's definitely an authentic good, and yet you're saying that it's a fake? Fine, if this is a fake, why don't you tell me what's wrong with it? Your method of appraising is indeed correct. Zhongxian nodded with a smile, not refuting the other party's words at all. Since you know it, why do you say that it's a fake? Liu Chang was taken aback by the other party's words. You've memorized it accurately, and your method of appraisal is correct as well. There's no doubt that this is a verdant bamboo. Xianxia chuckled lightly. These have been confirmed by our predecessors. How dare you try to deny? Ha! What did you just say? If that's the case, why do you claim that it's fake? Are you making a fool of us? Everyone thought that Xianxia would deny the matter, but he admitted to it directly. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Even Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai found their eyebrows shooting up. You claimed that the other party had bought a fake, and yet, the next moment, you turned around and said that it is real. Even a person with dissociative identity disorder wouldn't be as fickle as you. Chapter 454. Purchasing a herb at an inexpensive price, making a fool of you all? You are misunderstanding me. Even though the other party's face was turning green, Xianxia didn't fall into a panic. Instead, he chuckled lightly and said, I've only said that it's a fake because you are intending to use it to forge verdant crystalline pills. I've never said that it isn't a verdant bamboo. Confused by Xianxia's words, the elder and Liu Chang glanced at one another in bewilderment. Eventually, the latter couldn't hold it back any longer and asked, What do you mean? The attendants, Zhao Feiwu, and the others were baffled as well. They had no idea what Xianxia was up to. Simple, there's no doubt that this is a verdant bamboo, but if you were to use its leaves to forge verdant crystalline pills, I can guarantee you that not only will the pills be ineffective, one will even die upon consumption. Xianxia said, Death? You must be joking. Transcendent mortals have the ability to communicate with the world and sense the surroundings. While it grants them great strength, it also makes them particularly vulnerable to external influences, making it easy for them to breed inner demons. The verdant crystalline pill forges a heart of crystal within one, thus significantly reducing the damage one could suffer from inner demons. There's only benefits to be derived from its consumption, so how could anyone die from consuming it? Liu Chang uttered in disbelief. Even the elder couldn't help but shake his head. As a transcendent mortal, one's will could meld together with one's environment to move the energy in one's surroundings. However, this made it particularly easy for inner demons to appear. The verdant crystalline pill was the best medicine for one to dispel inner demons, and he had even consumed one himself. Its effectiveness was so great that he couldn't even put it into words, so how could one possibly die from it? This was clearly nonsense. Besides, as a skilled appraiser, he had also appraised the crystalline pill for others, and the other party had consumed it before him. There were no problems whatsoever with it. To die from consuming it was completely unheard of. Can you prove it? The elder turned to Xianxia and harumphed. If the other party couldn't prove it, then he could only be spouting nonsense. If it were anyone else, there would be no way to prove it other than forging the pill and consuming it. However, it just happens that I do have a way to prove it. As though expecting the other party to ask this question, Xianxia's lips curled up. He turned to Liu Chang and asked, I'll have to trouble you to fetch a piece of leaf for me. Liu Chang turned to the elder, and upon seeing the latter nod his head, he walked over and plucked out a leaf. Try burning it with fire. Xianxia instructed. Teacher. The elder gestured toward him. Do as he says. Even though he didn't quite trust the other party's words, the other party's calmness had unnerved him. If the other party were truly spouting nonsense, the other party would have surely flustered before his immense strength and authority. Yet, not only was the other party calm, his movements also exuded deep confidence. This casted doubt in the elder's mind. Could the verdant bamboo really be a fake? But that's impossible. He had specially examined it several times, and regardless of whether it was its stem, leaves, or a degree of hardness, there were no problems whatsoever. Yes. Upon receiving his teacher's consent, Liu Chang nodded and took out an ignitable fire roll. Then, he turned to Xianxia and harumphed coldly. This single leaf is worth at least dozens of spirit stones. If your words turn out to be a lie, I'll be expecting you to compensate our loss. There were only 12 leaves on the verdant bamboo. Given that the entire bamboo was worth 300 spirit stones, every leaf was worth an exorbitant sum. A single leaf was more than sufficient to purchase a city in Qianwu Kingdom. In that sense, every leaf was literally worth a city. Yet, due to this fellow's claim, they were going to burn a single leaf. The huge loss left even a 2-star appraiser like him with an aching heart. Don't worry, if there's no problem with the verdant bamboo, I'll surely compensate you. However, I'm afraid that you won't be saying such words in a moment's time, Xianxia said. Let's see what you're up to then. Seeing the confidence on Xianxia's face, Liu Chang harumphed. He ignited the ignitable fire roll and placed it beneath the leaves. Wang! After around 2 minutes, just as Liu Chang was about to demand Xianxia to compensate them, his hands suddenly jolted violently. The green leaf abruptly turned black and an incomparably pungent smell exuded from it. If there was hell in this world, this was probably what it would smell like. The sight felt extremely sinister. Ah! Shocked, Liu Chang subconsciously let go of the fire roll and the leaf. This. Jin Songhai and Jiu Mu stared at one another in shock. Ah! The elder was initially looking at Xianxia nonchalantly, but at this moment, his face abruptly warped in shock. He swiftly stepped forward to grab the leaf with his hands, and he stared at it with a grim expression, as though unable to believe the sight before him. What a potent poison! If this were infused into the verdant crystalline pill, not only would it not dispel one's inner demons, it would even seep into one's Xianxia, assault one's internal organs, causing one to die on the spot. As he spoke, cold sweat trickled down his forehead. If the other party hadn't said anything at all and he'd taken the verdant bamboo back to have it forged into verdant crystalline pills, many people would have died. At the same time, his reputation would be completely ruined. On top of that, he was intending to consume one himself to try for a breakthrough into a higher realm. If he were to really eat it, putting aside his reputation and his standing, even his life would be gone. What's the meaning of this? The elder couldn't maintain his calmness any longer. He turned to look at the attendant with an incredibly awful complexion. Dang Lang! Liu Chang's face was also incomparably dark. With a flick of his wrist, he drew his sword and pointed it toward the attendant, threatening to kill the latter as soon as the slightest bit of nonsense was uttered from his mouth. If it were just a fake, they could only blame themselves for the lack of acuity in their judgment. However, it was clear that someone had laced the leaves of the verdant bamboo with lethal poison. From the start to the end, that young man had only moved his mouth, and only the attendant had come into contact with it. Who else could the culprit be if not him? Ah! Hallmaster Sai, please spare me. I'm just an attendant, I've no idea what's going on. Besides, how could I possibly obtain poison of such high grade that even you're unable to perceive it? The attendant's knee immediately caved in, and he hurriedly kowtowed non-stop, pleading for the other party to spare him. Other people might not know this elder's identity and the authority he wielded, but he was well aware of it. To that elder, killing him was no different from killing an ant. Thus, not daring to hesitate in the least, he immediately kneeled down and admitted his fault. All right, he's indeed unaware of it. Recovering from his shock, the elder realized that he had also blamed the attendant erroneously. Thus, he gestured for Liu Chang to sheathe his sword. Given the lethality and inconspicuous nature of the poison hidden within the verdant bamboo, it must be at least a grade 4 poison. In other words, the one who poisoned the verdant bamboo was most probably at least a 4-star poison master. How could a person of that standing be willing to serve as a mere attendant in the first-class pavilion? Besides, if the other party truly wanted to make a move on him, given how his guard was down just now, there was no need for him to go through so much trouble. After all, he might not necessarily buy the verdant bamboo. Thus, the hypothesis that the other party had poisoned the verdant bamboo in advance to harm him didn't seem to hold. HMPH. Liu Chang sheathed his sword, but he still maintained an air of hostility. The medicinal herb that his teacher bought was actually laced with lethal poison. If news were to spread, his teacher would be in great trouble. To successfully lace a medicinal herb within the first-class pavilion with poison, who in the world could it be? And what did he hope to achieve from this? Little brother, thank you for your help. The elder turned to Xianxia once more, and this time, instead of disdain and coldness, his gaze was filled with commendation and respect. Even he was unable to discern any problem with this verdant bamboo. Yet, the other party was able to determine that there was a problem with it without even getting close to it. His eye of discernment was way too fearsome. Most probably, the other party's appraising ability was even higher than his. Fearsome. Now, it's been proved that the verdant bamboo is a fake, right? Xianxia glanced at the elder. Yes. It's a fake. After a moment of hesitation, the elder nodded. The main purpose of a verdant bamboo was to forge it into a pill to supplement one's cultivation. Yet, this stalk would kill the one who ingests it. In that sense, it could indeed be considered a fake. Actually, you need not blame him nor the first-class pavilion. They weren't the ones who laced the verdant bamboo with poison. In fact, it wasn't the doing of a human at all. Placing his hands behind his back, Xianxia lifted his head slightly and spoke with composure. It wasn't the doing of a human. The elder was bewildered. Even Jin Songhai and Jiu Mu couldn't help but turn their gazes over. Other people might not know too much about poison, but the two of them were true poison masters. They had grown up alongside poison, and they possessed broad knowledge in the field. The poison contained in the verdant bamboo was extremely bizarre. It had already melded within the veins of the leaves, making it extremely difficult to be noticed. On top of that, the poison was exceptionally potent such that it could even kill a transcendent mortal 3-dan expert easily. All evidence pointed to it being the doing of a 4-star poison master. If it wasn't the doing of a human, then, where did the poison come from? Bring me the information on the production of the verdant bamboo. Instead of answering the crowd's doubts, Xianxia turned to the attendant from before and instructed. Yes. Upon hearing the young man speaking up for him and the first-class pavilion, the attendant flashed him a look of gratitude before hurriedly walking out. Not too long later, he returned with a book in his hands. Most larger retailers would look thoroughly into the background of the artifacts they bought and compile it into a book so as to prepare their attendants for the questions of the customers. This could enhance the value of the treasure and track down the source of the problem if a fault appeared in the goods. Read it out loud. Xianxia instructed. UN. The attendant nodded. Flipping open the book, he began reciting, Verdant bamboo, originated from Hongshu Marsh. It was found by a merchant company and 4 months ago, the merchant company used a unique method to pick it and delivered it here. The information regarding the verdant bamboo was extremely detailed, and it even included details on who was the one who dug it out, who was the one who delivered it, where was the trade conducted, what kind of method was used to preserve its freshness. All in all, the introduction took up more than several hundred words. However, upon hearing the introduction, not only did the crowd not feel enlightened, they fell into even deeper confusion. The verdant bamboo was extremely well guarded and there was no chance for a poison master to lay his hands on it at all. Thus, this made the possibility of it being a human doing extremely unlikely. But if it wasn't a human doing, then how did the poison get here? The lethal poison had seeped into the branches and leaves, but yet, there isn't any damage on the plant at all. In fact, it's impossible for one to discern that it's poisoned from its outer appearance. Even 4-star poison masters would require a long duration of time to achieve such a feat. Jin Songhai spoke with a grim expression. He was also intrigued by this matter. If those records were real, there was indeed no way for anyone to strike at all. After all, it was no easy task for even a 4-star master teacher to poison the verdant bamboo so inconspicuously. One had to know that lethal poison had an adverse effect on plants as well. What's going on? The more appraiser Liu Chang listened on, the more confused he became. Eventually, unable to withstand his curiosity anymore, he turned to Xianxia and asked, "You still don't understand?" Xianxia chuckled and said, "Fine, I'll explain the matter then. I believe all of us here should know what the specialty of Hongshu Marsh." Specialty? That region seems to specialize in the production of withered leaf tea. Could it be related to that? The elder couldn't help but turn to look at Xianxia. Chapter 455. Concrete news of the soulless metal humanoid. The withered leaf tea, also known as the withered glory tea, was a well-known specialty of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's Hongshu Marsh. The tea grew in the marsh, and in a single year, there was only a single month that it would be alive. At any other time, it would be no different from a withered tree. Dead branches growing leaves, one withered while the other glorified, life and death intertwined together in such a mystical manner. This was where the origin of the name of the tea came from. Upon preparation, this tea could grant one the refreshing sensation of the 4 seasons, thus making it one of the most well-known tea throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. However, Hongshu Marsh was extremely dangerous. There were transcendent mortal experts who were devoured by the marsh, never to be seen on the face of this world ever again. On top of that, there's only a month of harvest for the tea leaves and the production amount was extremely low. As such, very few people had a chance to taste it. Indeed, that place is known for the production of withered leaf tea. But there's also an animal which lingers around the tea leaves, the withered leaf snake. Xianxia said. UN. The crowd nodded in agreement. The withered leaf snake was a spirit beast which lived off the withered leaf tea. It was a highly venomous spirit beast, and even a transcendent mortal 3D expert would die easily if bitten by it. Could it be that the venom on the withered leaf tea comes from the withered leaf snake? But that can't be. Even though the withered tea snake's poison is lethal, it has a unique smell to it. On top of it, its saliva also leaves a mark, making it extremely conspicuous to the eye. However, there's no visible damage apparent on this verdant bamboo, and it looks as good as new. The elder couldn't help but remark. The withered leaf snake was an extremely fearsome adversary that even transcendent mortals had to be careful of, thus contributing to its great reputation. If the withered leaf snake had left behind its saliva on the verdant bamboo, he would surely be able to tell so. It's not the saliva of the snake, but that this verdant bamboo was the nest for the withered leaf snake. In other words, this smooth-looking bamboo has had a withered leaf snake slithering over it every single day, Xianxia said with a grim expression. Ah! Hearing the words, the face of the attendant holding the records immediately paled, and he nearly stumbled over. He was in charge of taking care of the bamboo, and he had been wiping it frequently in the past few days. The thought that it used to be the nest of a snake left him flustered and disgusted. As such, the excretions of the withered leaf snake would stick onto the verdant bamboo, and over time, they would be absorbed and accumulate within the depths of the veins of the leaves. Ignoring the crowd's discomfort, Xianxia continued, as it's hidden very deeply within, it's impossible to notice it under normal circumstances and it won't have any adverse effects on individuals coming into contact with the bamboo either. However, as soon as the verdant bamboo comes into contact with intense heat, the poison will seep out, and all those who touches the poison will suffer greatly. If this verdant bamboo is only used as a formation core or a weapon, there wouldn't be much of a problem with it. However, it'll be disastrous if one were to use it to forge pills. Even a transcendent mortal 3D expert would die instantaneously if he were to accidentally consume it. That's also the reason why I said that if you're intending to use it to forge verdant crystalline pills, the verdant bamboo you're buying would be a fake. Xianxia explained. So that's the case. Upon coming to a realization, the crowd turned to look at the young man in admiration. To be able to notice the poison hidden deeply within the verdant bamboo just by looking at it, how deep must his understanding of the properties of plants, their habitats, and origins be? Incredible! The elder clenched his fists tightly together. Putting all other things aside, just the other party's eye of discernment was already far superior to his own. Gongzi is indeed formidable. You've truly taught me a valuable lesson today. Since you're interested in the spirit-calming grass, allow me to gift it to you as a token of my gratitude. The elder gestured grandly and said, Teacher. Liu Chang was stunned. Just a moment ago, when that fellow said that he was offering 500 gold coins to purchase the spirit-calming grass, he thought that there was something wrong with the other party's head. But thinking back on it now, the other party had probably already expected this sight then. But still, the spirit-calming grass was something worth 500 spirit stones. To give it away just like that, wasn't his teacher being a little too generous? Even though the other party had helped him by pointing out that there was venom within the verdant bamboo, there was no need for such a generous token of gratitude. Could it be that? But how is that possible? How could he have predicted this too? Suddenly, Liu Chang recalled something and his entire body stiffened. Then, he began to tremble violently. He suddenly understood why his teacher was being so generous. An appraiser could only make 3 appraising mistakes in his entire life. Exceed that amount and one's qualifications would be revoked. His teacher had appraised countless treasures, and he had already reached the limit of 3 mistakes. If he were to make another single error, he would be revoked of his license as an appraiser. In other words, if the other party hadn't interfered and his teacher were to have this verdant bamboo forged into a pill, even if no one were to die from this incident, his teacher would still lose his appraiser qualifications. Being in a high position for many years, it was unavoidable that he would offend many people and have many enemies. If he lost the protection of his identity, his enemies could potentially come straight for him. In other words, the other party had saved his teacher's life. Putting aside the spirit-calming grass, even if it was something even more valuable than that, his teacher would probably give it to him willingly. But the matter regarding his teacher reaching the limit of 3 appraising errors was only known among his teacher's close friends and kin. How did this fellow find out about it? And if he didn't know about it, how could he be so sure that his teacher would give the spirit-calming grass to him out of gratitude? Recalling the encounter a moment ago on the 1st floor, could this young fellow be actually an incomparable expert appraiser? As such a thought flashed across Liu Chang's mind, he hurriedly turned to look at the young man in an attempt to confirm his evaluation, only to see the young man reply with a righteous look, "How can I accept such a valuable present as a gift? Sun Qiong, pass this senior 500 gold coins. We have to pay the sum that we agreed on so that this elder doesn't make a loss." Pu. It was just a moment ago that Liu Chang thought that the other party was an expert, but upon hearing those words, Liu Chang's body swayed violently and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. The heck? To speak such shameless words so brazenly, where is your dignity? What was the difference between 500 gold coins and not paying at all? Was this how an expert should behave? Hurriedly turning to look at his teacher, he saw his teacher wobbling unstably on his feet, and it seemed as though blood was welling up in his chest. His entire face steeled in frustration. "Gongzi, this is my heartfelt gratitude. There's really no need for money. Elder, there's no need to be so courteous with me." The young man insisted. 500 gold coins is still within my means. Liu Chang. Any trash that you pick up from a battlefield would be worth that much money. Of course it is within your means. Knowing that he would definitely die of frustration if they were to continue quarreling on this matter, the elder chose to accept the gold coins. "I see that Gongzi seems to be well versed in appraising as well. May I know, who is your teacher? Could he be an appraiser as well?" Liu Chang immediately became more attentive. Given how the other party was able to discover a problem, which even his teacher couldn't notice, his mastery in appraising had reached an incredible level. Such a capable young individual must have a peerless expert behind him. He was curious to know which Grandmaster Zhongxian's teacher was. "Our young master is Master Teacher Zhongxian, and his teacher is Master Teacher Xianxia." Sun Qiong stepped forward and introduced proudly, "Master Teacher." The elder froze for a moment before coming to realization. His respect for the other party deepened. On the other hand, Liu Chang leaped back in shock. If only he knew that the other party had this kind of identity, he wouldn't have dared to stand against him from the start. Even though an appraiser was one of the most lucrative occupations, it still couldn't match up to master teachers. It was just like a government official and a nouveau riche. No matter how wealthy one was, the level of influence and prestige the two wielded were worlds apart. On top of that, this appraising capability of this master teacher wasn't inferior to even that of his teacher. "I see. That explains your acute eye of discernment. Please do pardon me for my previous rudeness." After recovering from his momentary shock, the elder clasped his fist and said, "I am Sai Xiaoyu. I am unbefitting of the address elder, so feel free to call me Brother Sai instead." The other party's appraising capability wasn't beneath him, and on top of that, he was a master teacher as well. The elder immediately thought of befriending the other party. "Sai Xiaoyu? Could you be Hall Master Sai of the Appraiser Hall?" Upon hearing that name, Zhao Feiwu couldn't help but agitatedly ask. As the princess of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance and an avid reader, she knew quite a bit about the experts at the peaks, the various occupations within the alliance. It was said that the head of the appraiser hall was a man by the name of Xianxia, and he was a 4-star pinnacle appraiser. He had appraised countless treasures throughout his life, and it was said that the Alliance head residents had hosted him as one of their esteemed guests before. She thought that it would be nigh impossible to meet such experts, and never in her dreams did she expect to find one being taught a lesson and scammed of a spirit-calming grass right before her. The position of a hall master is just a result of my old buddy's flattery. It's not worth mentioning. Upon being recognized, Sai Xiaoyu shook his head with a smile. I see, so it's Hall Master Sai. This is great, I just happen to have something that I require your help on. Upon learning of the other party's identity, Zhongxian's eyes lit up and he asked, I heard that a soulless metal humanoid has been found in Honghai City. May I know if the news is true, and if so, where it is? This was the main reason why he came to Honghai City. Since this person was the head of the appraiser hall, if the news was real, he would definitely be aware of it. Soulless metal humanoid? I see, Brother Zhong is here for that. Hall Master Sai chuckled upon coming to a realization. The rumors are true, and it is currently in the appraiser hall right now. The auction would be carried out tonight. Tonight? Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly together, and a troubled look slowly crept onto his face. It was already afternoon by the time the group arrived at Honghai City, and they spent quite a bit of time strolling around the appraiser hall as well. Judging from the current time, wasn't the auction about to start already? Yet, he didn't even have a single spirit stone on him at the moment. Without any money on him, he would probably be expelled right at the door, less to say, participate in the auction. One must know that it was a common procedure for larger auctions to demand an entrance fee so as to sieve out true buyers from the troublemakers. Otherwise, if everyone could enter freely, it might cause chaos in the auctioning. Indeed, it'll be conducted 2 hours later. If Brother Zhong is interested in the auction, I can reserve a suite for you. Sai Xiaoyu said. I'll be thanking Brother Sai in advance then. Nodding his head in agitation, Zhongxian continued, May I know how many spirit stones will it require to win the soulless metal humanoid? Only with sufficient information could he make thorough preparations. The soulless metal humanoid is something left behind by the soul oracles, so it's rather difficult to estimate its price. Our primary evaluation has priced it at 1,500 spirit stones, but considering the atmosphere in the auction, its final price will definitely be jacked up to at least 3,000 spirit stones. Sai Xiaoyu explained before turning to look at Zhongxian with a smile. Why? Is Brother Zhong interested in the matter? I am. It's just that. I'm a little short on funds. Zhongxian scratched his head awkwardly. Short on funds? Sai Xiaoyu chuckled. There's no need for worry about that. I have some savings of my own so I can lend some of it to you to make up for the amount you are lacking. May I know how much money are you short of? You're willing to lend some money to me? Great. Zhongxian gazed at Sai Xiaoyu in gratitude. I'm still lacking 3,000 spirit stones. Can you lend the money to me? Sai Xiaoyu. Liu Chang. Everyone. Chapter 456. Harmonious stream of flowing goblets. 3,000 spirit stones should be sufficient for you to take down the soulless metal humanoid. To borrow so much money. Does that mean that you don't even have a single spirit stone on you? A dark line streaked across Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai's foreheads. It was no wonder why this fellow offered gold coins each time he tried to buy something. They thought that it was an eccentric quirk of an expert. But to think that there would be such a practical reason to it. To think of buying the soulless metal humanoid without any money on hand. Just the thought of it left them faint-headed. Cough cough. Sai Xiaoyu coughed. He nearly choked to death on the other party's words. Brother Zhongxian, this. Do you not have even a single spirit stone on you? That's right. Without any hesitation, Zhongxian nodded his head. He had only started with a total of 10 or so spirit stones, and he had used it all in the midst of the journey. As such, his pockets were completely empty at the moment. Even though he had almost 100 million gold coins in his storage ring, gold coins weren't really in use here. In a sense, it wasn't wrong to say that Zhongxian didn't have even a single cent on him. This. Not expecting the other party to reply so candidly, Sai Xiaoyu's face turned so red that it nearly oozed blood. In truth, it was only out of politeness that he offered to lend the other party money. After all, given the other party's capability, he was indeed a person worth befriending. Yet, the other party took it for real and asked for 3,000 at a single go. The heck! Even though he was the head of the appraiser hall, he didn't have that much money on him either. Furthermore, he had just spent 2,000 spirit stones and given away a stalk of spirit-calming grass. Even if you wanted to exploit the rich, you should at least show some restraint. You don't have that much money? Never mind then. Is there any way to earn money swiftly in the appraiser hall? Seeing the other party's expression, Xianxia immediately knew that the other party was surely unable to fork out this sum, and he shook his head in disappointment. In truth, he was only giving it a try. He didn't really think that the other party would be able to loan him this massive sum of money. Besides, the both of them had only just met. It would be bizarre if one was willing to lend such a huge sum to a stranger. A way to earn money swiftly? You wish to earn sufficient money now to join the auction 2 hours later to buy the soulless metal humanoid. Sai Xiaoyu and the crowd nearly spurted blood. That fellow sure knew how to dream. If it was that easy to earn spirit stones, he, as the head of the appraiser hall, wouldn't have to come over here to browse through the various artifacts in hopes of earning a profit. If there was truly such an easy way to earn spirit stones, he would have surely done it himself already. There was no reason to leave it for someone else. I have to earn 3,000 spirit stones before the auction. Xianxia nodded. If he didn't earn this sum of money within the next 2 hours, he would be unable to buy the soulless metal humanoid and thus miss the opportunity to wake Lu Chong up. There's truly no way around it. You also know it yourself, 3,000 spirit stones is a huge sum. Seeing that the other party was serious, Sai Xiaoyu shook his head helplessly. Appraisers mainly earned their money through the price difference from buying and selling treasures. Even for Sai Xiaoyu, it would take several years before he could save 3,000 spirit stones. Furthermore, it was assuming that he was lucky enough to stumble by cheap treasures and find suitable buyers. Without meeting these two conditions, it would be impossible for him to earn money. In fact, it was often that he wasn't able to find any suitable buyers for the treasure that he bought. To earn 3,000 spirit stones in 2 hours. No one would dare to even dream of it. Teacher. But halfway through his words, Liu Chang abruptly interjected. Turning around, he saw his student looking at him hesitantly. I think that maybe that can earn one that much money within 2 hours. That? Do you mean? Harmonious stream of flowing goblets. Sai Xiaoyu's body jolted, but he eventually simply shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. It's impossible for anyone to succeed in it. It has been many years since the establishment of the appraiser hall, but there hasn't been a single person who passed it yet. But that's the only way for one to earn 3,000 spirit stones within 2 hours. I don't think that there's any other plausible way other than that. Liu Chang shook his head. Even though being an appraiser was a lucrative occupation, spirit stones still weren't that easy to earn. Usually, they would earn a commission determined by the value of the item. However, putting aside how there were very few valuable treasures to be appraised, there weren't many customers in the first place. After all, no one would be willing to spend their spirit stones if they could avoid it. Thus, even if Xianxia were to offer his service as an appraiser at this moment, it was impossible for him to gather 3,000 spirit stones in just 2 hours. Sai Xiaoyu hesitated. He knew that what his student said was true. Why? Do you have an idea in mind? What does harmonious stream of flowing goblets mean? Xianxia asked, having heard the conversation of the duo. Harmonious stream of flowing goblets is actually a trial for the 5-star appraiser examination. Once one passes the examination, one will be entitled to a massive reward accumulated within the appraiser hall over a long period of time. If I'm not wrong, it's worth around 5,000 spirit stones now. Since the other party asked about it, Sai Xiaoyu could only explain the matter. Trial. Xianxia was bewildered. There are rewards to taking high-tiered appraiser examinations. He had taken on the Master Teacher examination, Beast Tamer examination, Painter examination, Physician examination. but he had never heard of one earning rewards from taking on the examination. If that was true, then he should indeed try taking on the appraiser examination. There's indeed a reward, but it is actually prize money accumulated over time. Seeing through Xianxia's thoughts, Xiaoyu shook his head helplessly. Prize money. Xianxia blinked his eyes in confusion. Zhao Feiwu had read many books, but even she was unaware of the internal rules within the appraiser hall. There are many appraisers in the appraiser hall, but there's a limit to the knowledge an individual can wield. As such, appraisers often stumble by treasures that they were unable to be identified. Some of these treasures had been discussed by innumerable appraisers throughout generations, but no one was able to accurately identify what they were. Thus, in order to dispel their doubts, some of our predecessors chose to offer monetary incentives out of their own pocket to attract others to come forward, examine, and identify these treasures, as well as to encourage their juniors to study hard and solve these mysteries. However, even until date, no one has succeeded yet. As time passed, the reward grew larger and larger, and to date, it has already reached 5,000 spirit stones. Xiaoyu said. While the reward was indeed tempting, but how could be easy to identify the treasures that countless predecessors had failed to successfully appraise? There's such a matter. Xianxia widened his eyes in shock. This seemed somewhat similar to the wall of dilemma of the Physician Guild. No matter how impressive a guild was, there would always be problems that would stump them. Indeed, it has been long since the founding of the appraiser hall, and many talented appraisers have given it a try. However, no one had yet to succeed. Xiaoyu shook his head. The reason why he didn't bring it up was simply because it was way too hard. He was the most impressive appraiser in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, but even he was helpless before it. Needless to say, a youngster like Xianxia. Yet to succeed? But since no one knows what those treasures are, how do you ascertain whether someone has succeeded or not? Xianxia asked in puzzlement. Since even the predecessors were unable to identify those treasures, then who could confirm if one's answer was right or not? After all, if no one could identify those treasures, no one could say for sure whether one's evaluation was right or not. When a treasure reaches spirit rank, it'll gain wisdom. As long as there's no mistake in one's description, one will be acknowledged by the treasure. Besides, we're all official appraisers. Even though we might not be able to identify the treasure, we're still more than capable of assessing and testing whether one's answer is correct or not. Xiaoyu explained helplessly. These were basic facts that an appraiser should know, yet this fellow didn't even know about it at all. Was this fellow truly an appraiser who was more than capable than him? That's true. Xianxia came to a realization. Even if a formidable appraiser was unable to identify the specifics of a treasure, they should still have a way to determine whether a person's evaluation was correct or not. If they didn't even have this much skill, they would be unqualified as an appraiser. All right, bring me over to take a look. I would like to give it a try. Knowing that this method could bring him easy money, Xianxia swiftly made up his mind. Brother Zhong, hold it for a moment. Allow me to finish my words first before you make your decision. Seeing the other party deciding on the matter recklessly, Xiaoyu hurriedly stopped him. Xianxia nodded. Even though there's a reward for this trial, there's actually stake involved. Every challenge requires one to put 100 spirit stones as deposit. But of course, I can pay the deposit for you, so there's no need for you to worry about it. Xiaoyu said. 100 spirit stones. Xianxia was taken aback. It seemed like there was no free lunch in the world. He thought that he could join for free, but that didn't seem like it was the case. But thinking about it, it was to be expected. Without this restriction, all appraisers would be rushing to give it a try whenever they had the time, and the appraiser hall wouldn't be able to function normally anymore. Not only so, there's also a strict time limit to the challenge. Xiaoyu continued, just as the name, harmonious stream of flowing goblets, suggests, the treasures will be sent down to one via water, and one will be given 10 breaths to assess and identify it at a river bend. After which, one will have to point out the name and origin of the treasure immediately. Point out the name and origin of the treasure within 10 breaths. How is that possible? Before Xianxia could say anything, Zhao Feiwu had already exclaimed in shock to identify something. An appraiser usually had to do all kinds of assessment on the artifact, such as using a magnifying crystal, studying the patterns on it, and knocking on it to determine its constituents. The identification of any treasure was a lengthy and troublesome process. Even if one was familiar with the item, one would have to confirm it multiple times before coming to an evaluation. Yet, to have to offer a correct answer in just 10 breaths, that was outright impossible. On top of that, one was supposed to identify a treasure that even the predecessors were unable to identify. Before the identification process, is there any tip or information available to one? Zhao Feiwu asked. If there was some information, one could at least prepare oneself and focus on the key points of the treasure immediately. There isn't. The main reason why we're reluctant to give out prior information is so as to not mislead the challengers. Xiaoyu said. If anyone knew what the treasure was for sure, they would have long passed the trial. Since no one was able to identify the treasure, the information was bound to be incomplete. If so, there was a high chance it could influence the challengers' evaluation and impede them from coming up with the correct answer. That's true. Zhao Feiwu frowned deeply. While the harmonious stream of flowing goblets sounded like easy money, it was simply way too difficult. Putting aside 4-star appraisers, even 5-star appraisers would probably be stumped by it. Just as Zhao Feiwu was about to turn to Xianxia and advise him against it, the latter smiled lightly and replied, "All right then, I wish to challenge this harmonious stream of flowing goblets. I'll borrow 100 spirit stones from you first, and after I'm done with it, I'll return you the sum multiple folds." Chapter 457. Why don't we make a bet then? Seeing the other party insist on it, Xiaoyu relented. If you really wish to attempt it, I can bring you over. Even though the young man before him was able to see through a problem that he couldn't discern, deep in his heart, he still thought that it was impossible for the other party to pass the trial. Thus, he didn't pay much heed to Xianxia's declaration of paying him back multiple folds. Truthfully, he had already regarded the 100 spirit stones as a gift. After putting away the items that he had bought, the group walked out of the first-class pavilion and headed up the stairs. The bottom 2 floors of the appraiser hall were markets, while the floors beyond that made up their official guild. Walking into the lounge, they saw dozens of people lining up in 2 neat columns with all kinds of treasures in their hands. These artifacts weren't too valuable. They were most probably ordinary goods that could be bought for just several spirit stones on the first floor. There were 2 young men at the very front of the queue examining each of the customers' artifacts carefully. After assessing it closely, they would leave a mark on it and write an appraisal document. Some of those who had their artifacts appraised left overjoyed, whereas some left depressed. Both fake and authentic goods were mixed up with one another in the market on the first floor. If one chose correctly, one could make a huge profit. Otherwise, one could only concede to their misfortune. Looking at the expression of the crowd, it was clear that a larger proportion of the people belonged to the latter group. There are some who feel worried even after buying their goods, so they would come over here and have their items appraised. The ones conducting the appraisal on this floor are 1-star appraisers who have just passed their examination. Xiaoyu said. UN. Xianxia nodded. He had also seen the single shining golden star on the emblem pinned in front of the 2 young men's chests. 1-star appraisers were already capable of identifying some of the more common and simpler treasures, and the artifacts sent here were mostly of this tier as well. The harmonious stream of flowing goblets is in front. Let's proceed on. The group didn't dawdle in the main lounge for too long. Under Xiaoyu's lead, it didn't take long for them to arrive at a room. Hall Master Sai. Teacher. Upon walking into a room, several elders immediately came forward and greeted Xiaoyu respectfully. As the hall master, Xiaoyu wielded immense prestige in the appraiser hall. There were many 3-star appraisers who were his students, and they were indebted to him for his guidance. Taking a glance in the room, there were only around 6 to 7 people here. Puzzled, Zhao Feiwu asked, "How many appraisers are there in the appraiser hall in total?" Upon hearing the question, a bitter smile appeared on Xiaoyu's face as he shook his head. Even though the appraiser hall sounds impressive, including me, there is only a total of 3 4-star and 8 3-star appraisers. The others are all 2-star and 1-star appraisers. So few people. The crowd was taken aback. Seeing the grandness of the appraiser hall, they thought that there would be at least a dozen of 4-star appraisers here. Yet, contrary to their expectations, there were only 3 of them. It was no wonder why people said that it was hard to qualify as an appraiser. From the looks of it now, that didn't seem like just a rumor. Indeed. Xiaoyu shook his head. Changing the topic, he turned to the 2 3-star appraisers and said, "Call Elder Chen and Elder Lu over. Tell them that someone is interested in challenging the harmonious stream of flowing goblets." Challenging the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. The duo was taken aback. They hurriedly turned around and left. As 3-star appraisers, they were well aware of the difficulty of the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. It had been many years already, but still, not a single person had succeeded. To think that someone would still be interested in attempting it even now, he must be blinded by the immense reward. Not too long later, 2 white-bearded elders walked over. Before they even reached the room, a rough voice had already sounded. "Hall Master Sai, someone intends to challenge the harmonious stream of flowing goblets? Is it Old Hu or Old Du? Those 2 fellows haven't given up yet." The Old Hu and Old Du that he spoke of were 4-star appraisers from other branches. They had visited Honghai City several times in hopes of clearing the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, but to date, they hadn't succeeded yet. Only those 2 fellows had attempted the trial in the past few years. Most of the appraisers didn't bother trying, knowing the difficulty of the trial. Thus, as soon as the 2 elders heard that someone intended to challenge the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, they immediately thought of them. Where are they? Looking around the room but not seeing the familiar figures he expected to see, the rough-voiced elder asked in bewilderment. "Elder Chen, the challenger this time isn't one of them. It's this little brother here, Xianxia." Seeing Elder Chen looking around in bewilderment, Xiaoyu shook his head and stopped the latter. "Him." Not only were the 2 elders stunned, the other appraisers in the room also had a confused expression on their face. They thought that the one challenging the harmonious stream of flowing goblets would be some incredible appraiser, but to think that it would still be an immature fellow who wasn't even 20 yet. Ignoring the crowd's reaction, Xiaoyu introduced, "Brother Zhong, this is Elder Chen Yu. The one next to him is Elder Lu Shi. They are the other 2 4-star appraisers of the guild." Zhongxian nodded. Even if Xiaoyu hadn't introduced them, Zhongxian had also guessed as much. Even though the 2 elders weren't dressed in the appraiser robe, their aura was incredibly profound and heavy. With just a look, it was clear that they possessed incredible cultivation that was on par with Jin Songhai. Judging from their strength and their casual attitude before Xiaoyu, it was clear that they were the 2 remaining 4-star appraisers. "Hallmaster, what did you call him?" "Brother." Elder Chen was the first to notice Xiaoyu's bizarre way of addressing Zhongxian, and he was puzzled by it. As the head of the appraiser hall, his standing was so high that everyone, with the exception of them 2, had to address him as teacher. Yet, he actually addressed a young fellow as brother. What could that young fellow's background be? Even though Brother Zhong is young, his expertise in appraising is in no way inferior to me." Xiaoyu chuckled. "In no way inferior to you. Aren't you exaggerating it a little too much?" Elder Chen shook his head in disbelief. The other appraisers in the room shared his thoughts as well. Rather than talent, appraising was more about experience and knowledge. Knowledge formed the basis of an appraiser's evaluation, and only with boundless knowledge would one be able to reach great heights in the path of an appraiser. Judging from this fellow's appearance, he seemed to be only 18 or 19 this year. Even if he had started studying from his mother's womb, at maximum, he only had 20 years to accrue knowledge. How could he possibly compete with Hall Master Sai, a 4-star appraiser who had devoted his entire life to appraising? It's true. A problem has occurred with the verdant bamboo that teacher appraised previously. Seeing the doubt in the eyes of the crowd, Liu Chang quickly explained the happenings from earlier. "You mean that, with just a look, he noticed the lethal poison contained with the verdant bamboo and determined that it wasn't suitable for the forging of pills? This doesn't seem like the means of an appraiser, doesn't it?" After hearing Liu Chang's story, not only were the crowd unimpressed, their bewilderment only deepened. An appraiser would have to examine the bamboo carefully, perhaps taking some samples and experimenting with them even before coming to such a conclusion. Yet, to be able to determine so much with just a single glance. Why did he feel like a fortune teller instead? All right, Brother Zhong, we'll open the chamber to the harmonious stream of flowing goblets for you right now. You'll have to enter alone, and there'll be a total of 10 treasures within. As long as you appraise a single one of them accurately, you will be considered to have passed the trial. Disregarding the doubtful looks from the crowd, Xiaoyu waved his hands. UN. Zhongxian replied. It didn't seem difficult since he only had to identify one of the artifacts correctly. Let's begin. Xiaoyu beckoned for Elder Chen and Elder Lu to the wall, and each of them took out a key and placed it into an aperture in the wall. Jia. The wall parted, revealing a door within. The artifacts within the harmonious stream of flowing goblets were incredible treasures. Thus, for security purposes, only when the 3 keys were gathered could it be opened. Without the 3 keys, even a transcendent mortal Forden expert would be unable to enter. With a flick of his wrist, Xiaoyu took out a pile of spirit stones and placed it within a grey aperture on the wall. In an instant, it was as though a formation had been activated, and brilliant light shone from it. You can enter now. Xiaoyu gestured. Thus, Zhongxian began walking over. However, before he could walk through the door, Elder Chen stepped in front of him. Do you understand the difficulty of the harmonious stream of flowing goblets? Even though Hall Master Sai had just praised the other party, he still didn't think too much of this young man. If harmonious stream of flowing goblets was that simple, someone else would have succeeded long ago. I have no idea. Zhongxian shook his head. I have just heard about it, and it's said that as long as one clears the trial, one will be entitled to a reward of 5,000 spirit stones. Thus, I decided to give it a try. You dare to challenge it, right after hearing about it. Elder Chen felt his vision turning dark. He thought that the other party might be genius who had prepared a long time for this since Hall Master Sai had brought him over. Yet, to think that he had come over right after hearing of it. Also, what did he mean by 5,000 spirit stones? It can't be that he was here for the reward, was he? Elder Chen was furious. The harmonious stream of flowing goblets wasn't a mere challenge. It was a trial for 5-star appraisers as well, and as such, only 4-star appraisers were qualified to attempt it. Yet, to wish to challenge it just for the prize money, wasn't the other party taking this way too lightly? Hall Master Sai, to allow a person to challenge the harmonious stream of flowing goblets just for the prize money, isn't this infringing on the prestige of the appraiser hall? Unable to hold back his rage, Elder Chen turned to Xiaoyu to protest. To wish to attempt a 5-star appraiser examination test just for its monetary reward, the other party was underestimating the occupation a little way too much. Elder Chen, you're exaggerating the matter. Brother Zhong is here for the spirit stones, but he has the capability to back it up. Xiaoyu intended to speak up for Zhongxian, but after a moment of hesitation, he realized that this fellow was indeed here for the spirit stones. Capability to back up his words? Harmonious stream of flowing goblets was also known as harmonious stream of flowing leaves. Its meaning is simple: the challenger has to identify the type, name, origin, value, and various other properties of the artifact in the time that the artifact is flowing by. To challenge it just for the spirit stones, this. Elder Chen protested furiously. Interrupting the other party, Xiaoyu said, Enough, since the trial is already activated, let's just allow him to attempt it. Who knows, perhaps Brother Zhong might be able to induce a miracle. He didn't bear much hope for Zhongxian, but since he had agreed to give him a try, he decided to go through with it. After all, the other party had done him such a huge favor. How could he face others if he couldn't even deliver what he had promised? UN. Seeing that Xiaoyu had managed to keep Elder Chen in check, Zhongxian couldn't be bothered to say anything else. Thus, he stepped forward and entered the room Wang. As soon as he entered, the doors behind him closed. Nonsense. This is truly nonsense. Elder Chen flung his sleeves in displeasure. This elder over here, do you mean that our young master will fail the harmonious stream of flowing goblets? Just as Elder Chen was displeased with Hall Master Sai's actions and was about to protest, a nonchalant voice sounded from behind. Turning around, Elder Chen saw a plump man whose fat was trembling standing not too far away. Indeed, the harmonious stream of flowing goblets requires one to have a deep understanding of the art of appraising. Given how even old Hu and old Du weren't able to clear it, how can an 18 or 19-year-old fellow like him clear the trial? Elder Chen harumphed in displeasure. Since you're so certain of it, then, why don't we bet on it then? The plump man said. Bet? Elder Chen was taken aback. Indeed. I'll bet that our young master will surely be able to clear the trial while you'll bet for the opposite. As for the stakes, let's not make it too big. What do you think of 3,000 spirit stones? The plump man stared at Elder Chen with a bright smile. Chapter 458, Copper Hammer Not Make It Too Big, and 3,000 Spirit Stones. Elder Chen nearly fainted on the spot. If he were to take out all of his assets, he could fork out this sum. However, he would be as good as bankrupt if he were to do so. To take out so much money for a bet, you must be insane. 3,000 spirit stones. Do you have that much money? Seeing that his old friend was placed in an awkward position, Elder Lu stepped forward to intervene. Of course I don't have that much money, the plump man declared proudly. You don't have that much. Everyone fell speechless. You spoke as though you had several 10,000 of spirit stones in your possession. Despite having nothing at all, you still dare to initiate a gamble, not to mention, to speak so brazenly. Aren't you being way too arrogant? Zhao Feiwu slapped her forehead in frustration. She had witnessed this fearless fool acting up many times, but still, she couldn't have imagined that he would go straight up to a 4-star appraiser and propose a bet. And more importantly, he didn't even have the money to pay up. The heck, you sure are an incredible person. It sure is true, birds of a feather do flock together. She couldn't help but shake her head. The young master of that plump man, Sun Qiong, was a fellow who seemed to fear nothing but peacefulness. Just a while ago, the young master taught Hall Master Sai a lesson in public, and now, the servant was going even further. Honestly, where did these two eccentric fellows pop out from? Since you don't have any money, why should I gamble with you? Elder Chen replied with a steeled face. It's true that I don't have any money, but Hall Master Sai does. It's just 3,000 spirit stones, he'll at least lend us this meager sum. Sun Qiong smiled. Hall Master Sai, who was watching the commotion by the side, didn't expect to get brought into all of the sudden. He nearly spurted blood. He did say that he would lend some money to Xianxia, but that was more of a pleasantry. Yet, this master and servant duo took his words seriously, putting aside how one tried to borrow 3,000 spirit stones from him for an auction. The other one was now trying to get 3,000 spirit stones from him for a gamble. Do you all know what politeness is? Can you all show some restraint? Do you all need to be so darned? Hall Master Sai was just about to explain when the plump man before him shook his hands casually and said, even if Hall Master Sai is ungrateful, decides to disregard how a young master helped him, Zhao Feiwu Gongzi would also surely loan the sum to us. It's just 3,000 spirit stones. To Gongzi, it doesn't mean anything much. Zhao Feiwu. I'm just an innocent passerby. Why did you have to involve me in the conflict? Hall Master Sai's eyes also flipped over. What do you mean by calling me ungrateful and disregard how your young master has helped me? Haven't I given him a spirit calming grass already? In fact, I even suppressed all opposition and paid 100 spirit stones for him so that he can enter the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. Is this not considered as repaying the favor? The duo was just about to protest when Sun Qiong shook his hands and spoke up once more. Look, neither of them are disagreeing with me. This shows that 3,000 spirit stones mean nothing to them at all. Don't worry, if we were to lose, we'll surely be able to rake up the money to repay you. But as for you, you just declared so confidently that our young master will surely fail. It can't be that you're regretting what you said right now, can it? To think that you're a 4-star appraiser at that. To be unable to take out this little bit of money to prove yourself, how embarrassing. You. Not expecting to be looked down on by a servant, Elder Chen's face flushed red in anger. What you? If you truly don't dare to gamble with me, then let's just forget about it. However, You'd better keep your mouth in check next time. Our young master is incredibly talented, and your insignificant harmonious stream of flowing goblets means nothing to him at all." Harumphing coldly, Sun Qiong tilted his head upward arrogantly. He had complete confidence in Xianxia. "Fine, I'll wager with you then." Seeing how the other party was getting more and more arrogant, Elder Chen couldn't hold himself back anymore. As a 4-star appraiser, it was indeed embarrassing for him to argue with a servant. However, this plump man had truly gone too far. His tone was contemptuous and his attitude was arrogant. On top of that, his disdainful glance. How did a 4-star appraiser like him, who was respected no matter where he went, become no different from a shameless beggar? He could tolerate being looked down on by a 5-star appraiser, a 4-star master teacher, or even the hall master. However, being looked down by a fellow whose cultivation was only, he simply couldn't take this lying down. Not bad. Does anyone else dare to wager with me? I thought that all of you doubted our young master's capability. It's not too late now. Otherwise, you won't get a second chance. Sun Qiong chuckled gleefully upon seeing that he had managed to hook this big fish. He immediately scanned the room for any potential customers. Oh. Hearing that the fellow still wanted to wager with the rest of them, the crowd fell speechless. Look, the harmonious stream of flowing goblets is beginning. Just as Sun Qiong was trying to dupe a few other people to wager with him, a voice amidst the crowd suddenly sounded. Everyone immediately turned to look at the wall, only to see it growing brighter and brighter, as though some formation was gradually whirling to its peak. What that lay beyond the door wasn't another room but a garden. It was filled with flowers, and a faint aroma lingered in the air. There was a stream within the garden flowing from the distance, and a tick-tack sound echoed in the air as it struck against the rocks, forming a melodious tune. The stream was winding, and right before Xianxia was an arc that was sufficiently wide for an individual to stand on. As soon as Xianxia walked over, it was as though a formation was activated instantly. A leaf slowly flowed over from the distance. A bizarrely shaped object was placed on top of the leaf. Its irregular shape made it difficult for one to tell what it was. Seems like this is the artifact that I'll have to appraise. Activating the Eye of Insight, Xianxia realized that he couldn't see through the properties of the artifact and his eyes immediately lit up. As expected of a treasure that stumped even 4-star master teacher. Even the Eye of Insight was unable to discern what it was. Of the name, harmonious stream of flowing goblets, goblets referred to wine cups and it was commonly used by literati. They would often sit by the stream and allow a goblet to slowly flow along with the currents, and whoever it reaches shall gulp down the wine and come up with a poem. As most artifacts would simply sink due to their weight, the leaf of a purple mountain tree was used to float them. This leaf was extremely light, and it could easily keep 1 or 2 adult humans afloat on the surface of the water without any problem. This was also the reason why the harmonious stream of flowing goblets was also known as harmonious stream of flowing leaves. What in the world is that? Since the leaf hadn't reached Xianxia yet, he could only assess the artifact by its shape and outer appearance. It was around the size of a watermelon, and it was indigo in color. It seemed to be forged by some kind of special alloy. After staring at it for a moment, Xianxia couldn't help but shake his head. He had never read any book on appraising, so he wasn't too sure how appraisers work. Given how many master appraisers couldn't identify these artifacts, how could an amateur like him possibly see through them? Forget it. Turning his head away from it, Xianxia took out a paper and brush. Then, when the leaf finally reached him, he stretched out his hands to touch it. Wang! A book appeared in his mind. The main reason why he dared to challenge the harmonious stream of flowing goblets was due to the library of Heaven's Path. Otherwise, given his lacking appraising skills, he would surely be unable to identify even a single one of the artifacts. Flipping open the book, Xianxia began jotting down the details. Copper hammer, crafted 3,000 years ago by 5-star blacksmith Duanmu Yiguang. Its material is an alloy consisting of 13 rare minerals, 100 war metal, clear dust sand, indigold metal, and crafted over a period of 49 days. While Xianxia was writing on the book, the crowd outside was staring at the wall nervously. Sun Qiong ran around to persuade others to wager with him, but no one bothered with him. At this moment, Everyone's attention was fixated on the wall. They wanted to know whether this young man could successfully identify an artifact and clear the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. Judging from the time, the first treasure should have reached him already. "Do you think he'll succeed?" an appraiser amidst the crowd asked. "Succeed? You must be joking." Even Hall Master Sai has challenged the harmonious stream of flowing goblets multiple times, but he was unable to identify a single one of the artifacts. This just shows how difficult the matter is. How could a young lad like him possibly succeed? Putting everything aside, just look at that arrogant servant of his. Do you think that a real appraiser would have such an arrogant servant? That's hard to say though. Since he's willing to propose this bet, it could only mean that he's confident. Everyone discussed with hushed voices. Even the youngest of the appraisers in the room were in their 30s. They found it hard to accept that a lad who wasn't even 20 yet was challenging the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. Don't worry. If the artifacts in the harmonious stream of flowing goblets could be identified so easily, it wouldn't be taken as the 5-star appraiser examination. Seeing Elder Chen staring at the wall nervously as well, Elder Lu walked over and consoled him. In truth, he didn't think much of Xianxia either. He had attempted the harmonious stream of flowing goblets before, and putting aside how difficult it was to identify those peculiar artifacts, more importantly, the time which one had to examine them was way too limited. In just 10 breaths, it would have already flowed away from one. How could one successfully appraise an artifact which one had never seen before in just 10 breaths? Worry? What do I have to worry? He's just an ignorant brat. Even though he isn't an appraiser at all, he still dares to spout such arrogant words. Elder Chen harumphed, but halfway through his words, a bell chimed and his body suddenly jolted. Dong! That sound came from the beyond the wall, and it seemed to resonate in the depths of one's soul. A chime? Did he fail? Wait, that shouldn't be. Only after all of the artifacts have been appraised will a bell chime to indicate the challenger's failure. Judging from the time, he should have just barely appraised his first artifact. The crowd was taken aback. A confused look appeared on their faces. The chiming of a bell usually meant that one had failed to identify a single artifact in the harmonious stream of flowing goblets and that one had failed the trial. Was it over already? But Zhong Xian had only just entered a moment ago, and judging from the time, he should have only just appraised the first artifact. It's said that if one didn't offer the slightest appraisal on the first artifact, one will be declared to have failed the trial immediately. There's such a saying. Wait a moment. Now that I think about it, I recall reading it somewhere in the books before. Some amidst the crowd shouted, and a bizarre expression immediately crept on everyone's faces. Even if a challenger couldn't identify the first treasure, he could at least make a rough guess. If Zhong Xian had really failed because he didn't write anything at all, that would be truly embarrassing. Hualala. Everyone immediately turned to look at Sun Qiong with eyes of sympathy. Without a doubt, this fellow had lost tragically this time. Dang lang. But at that moment, the sound of a teacup falling to the ground echoed in the room. Following which, everyone saw Hall Master Sai's body trembling ceaselessly, and his face gradually paled. That isn't a chime. It's spirit euphoria. In other words, not only did he manage to identify the artifact, he even gained the acknowledgement of the artifact's spirit. Chapter 459, The Call of the Spirit, Acknowledgement of the Painting's Spirit Euphoria. Elder Chen and Elder Lu stared at one another and froze. How? How is that possible? The chiming should be heavy and deep, but this sound is sharp and resonates with one's soul. Only the legendary spirit euphoria is capable of inducing such euphoria in one's heart. Hall Master Sai said. This. The duo staggered. Thinking back, given the agitation they had just felt from the sound a moment ago, it was indeed unlikely to be the doing of a bell chime. Could it be really spirit euphoria? But how was that possible? Elder Chen's face twitched, and his lips turned white. He had just proudly declared that the other party surely wouldn't be able to identify even a single treasure, yet not only did the other party manage to do so, he even induced spirit euphoria. Did he have to be so formidable? The acknowledgement of a treasure, spirit euphoria. This is the call that formidable spirit weapons induce when they're excited. This. Hearing Hall Master-size words, all those who shot gazes of sympathy towards Sun Qiong were dumbfounded. It was as though someone had forced a turtle into their mouth, making it impossible for them to close it. They thought that this fellow would lose so tragically that he might be leaving stark naked, but he managed to make such a huge comeback. It was fortunate that no one was silly enough to wager with him previously. Otherwise, the one who would be leaving stark naked would be them. As cold sweat drenched their backs, they subconsciously turned to look at Elder Chen, only to see his face steeled and his forehead marked with black streaks. He looked as though he would faint at any moment. 3,000 spirit stones. Even though he was a 4-star appraiser, he was probably doubting the meaning of life at this moment. Seeing everyone's expression, Sun Qiong asked in puzzlement, "What does spirit euphoria mean?" Pu. Elder Chen couldn't hold it back anymore and a mouthful of blood spurted out. There was not a single appraiser who didn't know of spirit euphoria. In fact, even apprentices would be aware of it. Yet, this fellow didn't know a thing at all. It was one thing for him to lose to a 5-star appraiser or a formidable expert, but to lose to a servant who couldn't even compare to an apprentice. Why was he so foolish as to be goaded into making the wager? Seeing how the confused plump man was about to ask the frenzied Elder Chen about the matter, Liu Chang finally couldn't watch on anymore and hurried forward to explain. "You should know about how items can be divided into 5 tiers: God, Saint, Spirit, Phantom, and Mortal, right?" UN. Sun Qiong nodded. This classification wasn't a secret even in Xianxia Kingdom. It was a common fact known to all cultivators. When an equipment reaches spirit tier, it'll gain spirit. It's similar to the spirit creation of paintings. Even though it's unable to think like humans, it'll be able to recognize and acknowledge cultivators. This aspect is somewhat similar to having a beast tamer acknowledge one as its master. Liu Chang continued, "Equipment that acknowledged a cultivator would release this kind of euphoric sound, and this is termed as spirit euphoria. As soon as it appears, a cultivator would be able to become the true master of the weapon by feeding it a droplet of his blood." Become the true master. Sun Qiong widened his eyes in shock. Indeed. The artifacts on the harmonious stream of flowing goblets are treasures that countless appraisers were unable to identify. To induce spirit euphoria right after he entered, could it be that, not only did he manage to identify the artifact, he even managed to analyze the strengths and flaws of it as well? Liu Chang's face was filled with disbelief. Analyze the strengths and flaws. Every top-notch equipment is forged with a blacksmith's heart poured into it, but due to the limitations of material and the skill of the blacksmith, flaws will appear on even the most formidable treasures. As long as this kind of flaws is made up for, the equipment could reach higher tiers. An equipment possessing spirit is aware of its own flaws, but as it's unable to communicate with anyone, it's unable to find a way to make up for them. Some experts could easily find these flaws and earn the acknowledgement of the spirit of the equipment. However, this is a skill that only high-ranked blacksmiths possess. Why would it appear in an appraisal? The more Liu Chang explained, the more confused he became. The main responsibility of an appraiser was to determine the identity of an artifact and its background. As for the flaws and strengths of the artifact, that was beyond their means. That was a skill that only skilled blacksmiths who had achieved a profound understanding of equipment would have. Could it be that the fellow inside wasn't just an appraiser but a formidable blacksmith as well? Was that why he could easily identify the treasure and analyze its strengths and flaws? Finally recovering from his shock, Elder Lu turned to his old friend and consoled, "The first artifact that appears happens to be an equipment. If he's a blacksmith, it's not too surprising for him to be able to identify it. However, an appraiser has to be more than capable of identifying weapons, paintings, antiques, medicinal herbs, and even cultivation techniques and battle techniques. They must be well-rounded in all aspects. The 10 artifacts of the harmonious stream of flowing goblets cover the various occupations. If he's just a blacksmith, he'll only be able to identify the first one." Blacksmiths had an in-depth understanding of equipment. It wasn't completely impossible for Zhong Xian to be capable of identifying an equipment swiftly, find its strengths and flaws, and win its acknowledgement. However, It was a pity that the harmonious stream of flowing goblets tested one on one's appraising ability, not on one's understanding of equipment. The 10 artifacts didn't just consist of equipment. There were many other items as well. No matter how knowledgeable Xianxia was in the field of equipment, he would only be able to identify one. Elder Lu was in the midst of consoling his old friend when they heard the plump man beside them muttering to himself, "Right, didn't Hall Master Sai say that he would have cleared the trial as long as he could recognize a single artifact?" Elder Chen had just barely calmed down when he heard those words, and his face paled once more. Internally, he could feel his heart bleeding. There had been not a single success case to the harmonious stream of flowing goblets in the past. As such, as long as one was able to identify even one of the 10 artifacts, it would be considered as a pass. In other words, regardless of whether Xianxia was able to identify any other artifacts or not, he would have to part with his 3,000 spirit stones. While a huge wave of shock had washed over the appraisers outside, in the trial, Xianxia stared at the bizarre metal hammer speechlessly. "What are you calling out for? You scared me." After jotting down the details on the artifact from the Library of Heaven's Path, this toy suddenly began buzzing, causing him to nearly drop his brush in shock. What the heck was it? It wasn't like it was a clock, gong, or something. What was it trying to call out for? Don't you know what is manners? It's rude to shout in public, you know. Forget it, I'll just write the names then, Xianxia thought. There were 72 flaws on the copper hammer recorded in the Library of Heaven's Path, and if he were to jot down all of them, he would surely die of fatigue. Since he had written down its name, origin, and 2 to 3 of its flaws, it should be sufficient for a pass. Putting down his brush, Xianxia turned his gaze away from the copper hammer to wait for the arrival of the next artifact when the heavy lump of metal suddenly flew from the stream and landed right before him. What's going on? Xianxia blinked in shock. Why is a hammer like you jumping right in front of me instead of lying obediently on the tree leaf? Just so you know, I'm not a female hammer. Forget it. Xianxia was unable to comprehend the situation before him. However, since the previous tree leaf had already floated away and the next artifact was slowly flowing down, Xianxia shook his head and turned his attention away. Placed on top of the second tree leaf was a painting. It was emitting a faint glow. The spiritual energy in the surroundings were automatically attracted to the painting, and incredibly realistic birds flew into the air, dancing with liveliness. It's at least a 5th-level painting. As a 3-star painter, Xianxia still possessed some understanding of painting. Even though the artifact was still a far distance away from him, he could already see what was incredible about it. At the very least, its grade was no lower than the 5th level. He activated his eye of insight. However, just like the copper hammer, he wasn't able to tell anything at all. In other words, the painting's value had surpassed the ability of his eye of insight. Soon, the leaf reached his surroundings, allowing him to catch a clearer glimpse of the painting. The painting was exquisite, but there was no signature left behind, making it impossible to determine whose work it was. The birds flying above the painting also looked extremely foreign. Of all of the savage beasts that Xianxia learned about from beast taming books, there was none that fits the shape. In other words, not only was there no name for the painting, it was even impossible to determine what those birds were. It was no wonder why so many appraisers before were unable to identify it. Flaws. Upon coming into contact with the painting, Xianxia began moving his brush excitedly. Teacher, after the spirit euphoria, it's highly likely that the artifact will automatically acknowledge Xianxia as its owner. If so, on top of paying the 5,000 spirit stones, that artifact will also have to. Upon recalling something, Liu Chang hurried over to Hall Master Sai and brought up the matter. Artifacts possessing spirit were able to choose their owner as they pleased. In other words, through this harmonious stream of flowing goblets, not only did Xianxia earn 5,000 spirit stones from clearing the trial and 3,000 spirit stones from winning the wager against Elder Chen, perhaps, he would be taking away the equipment as well. What in the world was this? When other people challenged the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, they ended up paying 100 spirit stones. On the other hand, not only did this fellow earn a huge profit, he even managed to steal away the various treasures in it. The appraiser hall was truly making a huge loss this time around. Artifacts have their own spirit, and they are allowed to choose their owners. Even though these artifacts have been with our appraiser hall for many years, no one has been able to identify them. Now that someone is able to point out their identity and origin, it's only natural for them to be excited and want to acknowledge the person as their master. There's nothing we can do about this. Hall Master Sai had also considered this matter, and he shook his head helplessly. Every single treasure in the appraiser hall was incomparably valuable, and if possible, he didn't wish for any of them to get out. However, since the other party had earned the acknowledgement of the spirit of the weapon, there was nothing he could do. Seeing that his teacher was helpless toward this situation as well, Liu Chang asked worriedly, "Then, what if this happens to the artifacts later on as well?" Don't worry. The first artifact is an equipment, so blacksmiths or those who possess a natural affinity toward equipment would be able to win its acknowledgement easily. However, it'll be different for the artifacts behind. There are antiques, paintings, as well as medicinal herbs. It'll be impossible for him to identify all of those treasures. Besides, even if he does, it'll be extremely difficult for him to earn the acknowledgement of their spirit. It wouldn't be a joke to say that it is practically impossible. Hall Master Sai smiled lightly. There's no need to worry so much. That's true. Liu Chang was taken aback for a moment before recovering. Nodding his head, he was just about to say something when the spiritual energy before him suddenly rippled intensely and gushed straight through the closed doors. Following which, everyone's eyes blurred for a moment, and countless birds formed by spiritual energy danced and chirped in the air. The call of the spirit, acknowledgement of the painting? This is a masterpiece painting acknowledging its owner. Hall Master Sai's vision went dark. Chapter 460. Poor people have it rough. The first 5 levels to painting were reality depiction, spiritual canvas, infused intentions, breathtaking verisimilitude, and spirit creation. Upon reaching spirit creation, the beings within the painting would be able to absorb spiritual energy to reach higher levels. In fact, the entire painting would be granted spirit, and it would be able to find a suitable owner for itself. In this sense, it was similar to formidable spirit equipment. Before them, birds from a painting were formed by the gathering of spiritual energy, dancing and chirping energetically. Clearly, it had acknowledged the challenger within the trial. If it was an equipment or a person who possessed exceptionally affinity with equipment, the acknowledgement of the first artifact could be explained. However, it was completely different for a painting. Painting was a refined sport, and it was the expertise of literati. No matter how strong one was, it would be difficult for one to earn the acknowledgement of a painting. The only way to earn its acknowledgement was to understand the true artistic conception contained within the painting and comprehend its true meaning. But, for a painting which one didn't know the name, the content, or even the year of production, how could one possibly understand the intent behind it? Could this fellow be a painter as well? Only a true master in painting would be able to discern the thoughts of another painter in a painting that wasn't signed, sealed, or dated. Everyone's eyes shot toward Sun Qiong, curious to hear his explanation. Since this servant is so sure that his young master could pass the trial, he definitely knew a thing or two about it. Painter. Our young master is already one. Seeing the doubtful gazes from the crowd, Sun Qiong smiled gleefully. Placing his hands behind his back, he tilted his head upward proudly. On top of that, he created a 5th-level painting through a savage beast. To him, this is just a walk in the park. Created a 5th-level painting through a savage beast. Everyone's mouths twitched. One would have to at least be a 3-star painter to create a 5th-level painting. To do the same through a savage beast. How many stars would that require? Even the 4-star painters that they knew weren't capable of such a feat. It just happens that he's knowledgeable in equipment and painting. This doesn't truly reflect his appraising proficiency. Perhaps, it might just be luck, an appraiser amidst the crowd said. However, after saying those words, putting aside whether there was anyone willing to believe his words, even he found his own words hard to believe. Seeing how everyone was shocked speechless, and Elder Chen even seemed to be on the verge of collapsing, perhaps due to the sympathy he felt for his fellow appraisers, Hall Master Sai scanned the surroundings and said, "We'll know whether it's luck or not in the next artifact. If I'm not wrong, it should be a celestial treasure. These kinds of items appear randomly and no one can replicate them. No amount of prior knowledge of other occupations can help him on this. This is the purest form of appraisal. If it was truly luck, and Xianxia had only happened to identify the first two artifacts due to his double identity as a blacksmith and painter, it would surely be impossible for him to do the same for the rest of the artifacts. I really do hope that he fails to identify the other artifacts. The artifacts in the harmonious stream of flowing goblets are all incredible treasure left behind by the predecessors, and every single one of them can fetch an astronomical sum. Two of them have already recognized him as their master. If this goes on, I fear that our appraiser hall will go bankrupt. Elder Lu muttered pitifully. That's true. Hall Master Sai's mouth twitched as well. Just identifying the artifact itself was sufficient for one to pass the trial, but this fellow went ahead and had the artifacts acknowledge him as their master. They had already lost 2 artifacts. If this were to go on, it would be a huge blow to the appraiser hall despite its affluence. Don't worry, I've challenged the harmonious stream of flowing goblets before, and the third one is a celestial treasure. Elder Chen finally managed to suppress his urge to spurt blood and gritted his teeth. There are no records on what material it is made of, and it's even unclear as to whether it has a spirit or not. It'll be nearly impossible for one to identify it, needless to earn its acknowledgement. Celestial treasures were extremely rare in the world, and they weren't recorded in the books. As such, it was nearly impossible to call out their names. Furthermore, it was unclear whether it had a spirit or not. Thus, it was nearly impossible to have it acknowledge one as its master. However, as soon as he said those words, a chuckle sounded. You mean that our young master won't be able to identify the object and earn its acknowledgement? The one who spoke was still Sun Qiong. HMPH. Elder Chen flung his sleeves. There's no need for you to get displeased. How about this? I'll give you a chance to earn back your money. Let's continue to wager 3,000 spirit stones. If our young master is unable to identify what the object is and earn its acknowledgement, we'll call off the debt. Otherwise, you'll owe me another 3,000 spirit stones. How about it? Sun Qiong stared at Elder Chen with glowing eyes. Aye. Elder Chen's lips quivered. He wanted to agree to it, but he didn't dare to do so. He had just said that it was impossible for the other party to pass the trial, but the fellow went ahead to earn the acknowledgement of 2 of the artifacts. Who knows what would happen this time? You're chickening out again? I'm giving you a chance, but you sure don't know how to make use of it. With guts like yours, I truly wonder how you can call yourself a 4-star appraiser and a transcendent mortal expert. Sun Qiong glanced at Elder Chen disdainfully. You. Not expecting to be looked down by a servant twice in just a few short minutes, Elder Chen's face flushed red, and he looked as though he would faint from anger at any moment. Enough. At that moment, another fatty walked out from Sun Qiong's back and bellowed. Seeing someone stepping out to speak up for him, Elder Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He was just about to thank the other party when he heard the other party's words. You've to consider matters from Elder Chen's perspective as well. What if he doesn't have sufficient money to pay you back if, by chance, he loses? Butler son, you should learn to be more understanding. It isn't easy for him either. Poor people have it rough, you know. This can't be helped at all. Pu. After hearing those words, Elder Chen spurted another mouthful of blood. At this moment, he was completely frenzied. Appraiser was one of the most lucrative occupations in the world. As a 4-star appraiser, he was one of the top of the trade. Even though his wealth couldn't be said to be able to compare up to an entire nation, he wasn't too far from it. Yet, someone was publicly saying that he was poor. Pour your head. Fine, let's wager then. Who's afraid of whom? Unable to hold back his rage, Elder Chen bellowed. That's a promise then. However, what if you don't have any money to repay your debt after you lose? Sun Qiong shot his accomplice, Yuan Dao, a look of approval and chuckled. I'll borrow it from Elder Lu then, there's no need for you to worry about that. Elder Chen flung his sleeves. Elder Chen, you should reconsider the matter. Elder Lu's eyebrows twitched, and he hurriedly stepped forward to persuade the other party against it. Don't worry, I don't believe that fellow can even identify a celestial treasure. If he really is able to do so, I'll just admit my misfortune. Elder Chen clenched his jaws tightly. As a 4-star appraiser, he wasn't a reckless person. However, the two fatties before him were simply too infuriating. Besides, he truly believed that it would be impossible for that young man to identify a celestial treasure. One must know that this artifact that stumped even a passing 5-star appraiser. How could a fellow who popped out from nowhere possibly know anything about it, let alone earn its acknowledgement? Wang! While he was still immersed in his thoughts, a crisp buzz sounded from the room. It was similar to the call from before. The acknowledgement of a treasure, spirit euphoria. He was acknowledged by the celestial treasure. Elder Chen's face paled, and he suddenly burst into tears. To be able to win even the acknowledgement of a celestial treasure, what kind of monster was the other party? How in the world did he manage to do it? Ding dong! However, he wasn't stunned for too long. Various sounds echoed from within soon afterward. It didn't feel as though Xianxia was in a trial, rather. It felt as though he was in a music room, and various melodies mixed in with one another. Hall Master, I think we should forcefully terminate the trial. Hearing the various sounds within, Elder Lu couldn't hold himself back anymore and suggested, terminate. If we don't terminate it now, I fear that our appraiser hall might be shut down by him. Elder Lu's lips twitched. This. Hall Master Sai's face steeled. It would be formidable if anyone else can recognize 1 out of 10 artifacts, yet not only did this fellow manage to identify all of them, he even won their acknowledgement in the midst of doing so. If he were to continue on like this, he might really make a clean sweep of the treasures within the harmonious stream of flowing goblets. You should quickly make up your mind. If he continues on like this, and claims all of the artifacts, what should we do in the future? Let's just terminate it now. In any case, he has passed the trial already anyway. Knowing that there was no time to be wasted, Elder Lu urged Sai Xiaoyu. All right, let's have him stop now then. Knowing the severity of the matter, Hall Master Sai clenched his jaws. Initially, he thought that the other party only visited the harmonious stream of flowing goblets out of curiosity, and he would give up once he realized its difficulty. Who could have known that he would make the artifacts submit to him in an instant? Seeing so many valuable treasures submitting to him, they were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to allow him to proceed on with the trial. Even though the appraisal hall was known for its affluence and immense collection of treasures, there was still a limit to it. And the treasures that no one had been able to identify in the harmonious stream of flowing goblets were the height of the collection. They could accept having 1 or 2 being taken away, but if it were all of them, then the overall fortune of the appraisal hall would be reduced immensely. What in the world was this? For the appraisal hall to be forced to a corner by just an individual, the thought of it felt ludicrous in itself. Yet, it was happening at this very instant. Fetch the keys. Since there was a way to activate the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, naturally, there was a way to stop it as well. However, similar to the activation process, it required the usage of 3 of the keys simultaneously as well. All right. Elder Chen and Elder Lu hurriedly walked up to the wall, and stretching out their hands, they placed their keys into the apertures. Jia! Jia! Along with the insertion of the 3 keys, the formation immediately rumbled to a halt. The radiance slowly faded. What are you all doing? Sun Chong frowned. Don't worry, we've only stopped the formation. This won't hurt your young master at all. Hall Master Sai said. To stop the formation because you can't afford to lose, the appraisal hall, sure, is shameless. Sun Chong harumphed. Even though he hadn't heard their exchange, the meaning behind their actions was clear. Clearly, they were scared of the young master taking away all of the artifacts inside, so they didn't dare allow the trial to continue on any further. Cough cough, it's indeed our fault to forcefully terminate the trial. However, there's no need to worry. I'll make it up to your young master. Mocked in public, Hall Master Sai's face turned red. It was just as the other party had said, these treasures were left behind by their predecessors and they were necessary to conducting the 5-star appraiser examination. As such, they truly couldn't afford to lose them. However, forcefully terminating the trial like that was unfair to the other party as well. Thus, the appraisal hall could only find some way to make up for the other party's losses. HMPH. Sun Chong harumphed in displeasure. However, the formation was already stopped, and there was no way around it anymore. All right, open the door. Once the formation was stopped, the harmonious stream of flowing goblets would automatically cease to operate, and the artifacts wouldn't appear anymore. Relieved, Hall Master Sai shook his hands with a smile. Boom! But at that moment, the ground shook, and everyone nearly fell down. After which, a thunderous chime reverberated within the room, leaving everyone nearly deaf. It's the harmonious stream of flowing goblets acknowledging its master. The heck? Hall Master Sai looked at the door and bellowed frenziedly. Thank you for listening to PandaAudioBooks. If you love what you hear and want to support my work, check out the PayPal link in the description. Every bit helps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to stay updated with all our latest audiobook chapters. We'll see you in the next one.